of an empire in the past, but you can't talk of a nation. Nation is a very modern concept. And nation emerges out of the imagining of a nation by a group of people. Right? So that's why the notion is very important in the nation. And what constitutes a nation is not given, is not defined. In nation mein kya hoga? What would be its? Will it be religion? Will it be language? Will it be this or that or the other? There is absolutely no global rule on that. There are multiple ways in which nations have emerged. That is, a nation emerges as it is imagined. It is a process. It's not an event. Ek nation ban gaya. जब दुनिया का भूगोल बना तो ये नेशन बन गया, वो नेशन बन गया. Nation emerges out of a thinking of a certain kinds of people. The modern nation states emerge in Europe. I am supplementing what he is saying with slightly different examples. Modern nation states emerge in Europe primarily with the rise of capitalism, of course, on the basis of one language, one religion, homogeneity. Catholic France. Catholic France, Protestant England, Protestant Germany. ये Christian France and England भी नहीं. The Protestants were pushed into one corner of France, Brittany. France was a multilingual nation like India. The French Revolution flattened it out. So the notion is homogenize. एक बनाओ सब. हिंदी, हिंदू, हिंदुस्तान. मतलब एक ही चीज होने चाहिए, सारे एक ही मोड में बनना चाहिए. This was a European notion. And nation states emerged simultaneously with the domination of other people. Every nation state that emerged in Europe simultaneously became a colonizing power. That is, in the birth of the nation state, there was this aggrandizing element, suppressing element. They became empires. So the British said, and these nation states, as you know, emerged from about the 17th to the 19th century in Europe, right? The British said, how can India be a nation? They described India as a geographical expression. उसका असर 19th century में, उसका असर अभी तक है. We are still talked of as South Asians. है ना? Imagine talking of Europe as saying कि भाई इतना longitude, इतने latitude वाले जो हैं, वो Europe वाले हैं. You know, we are not a geographical nation. We are a nation, right? But they said you cannot be a nation because you have so many languages, you have so many religions, every conceivable, thousands of languages. You know, there is Europe is virtually flat compared to the variety that we have in this country, right? So that is when the Indian nationalists imagined a nation which was the opposite of Europe. This was going to be a nation which was going to celebrate diversity. ये हमारे imagination में था, ये कोई given नहीं था. That it is going to celebrate diversity. The more the languages, the greatest Assamese poet asked her was also the greatest nationalist. The greatest Tamil writer was also the greatest nationalist. There was no contradiction. The greatest Urdu writer, the greatest Hindi writer, they were all also the greatest nationalists. So there was no contradiction. This celebrating of diversity was a new notion, and the Indian nationalism was to be a humane nationalism, and it was going to be a nationalism which was going to free people rather than oppress people. The exact opposite of the European notion. Today we are borrowing a foreign notion of nation and calling it हमारी असली पुरानी राष्ट्रवाद ये है. This notion that one language, one religion, Hindu Rashtra, Hindi, Hindustan, is an alien concept in India. This is not our nationalism. Let's be very clear. It may be the European version of nationalism, which is what led to the Hitlers and the Mussolinis. It didn't happen in the rest of Europe because of powerful democratic movements there. जहाँ पे वो नहीं हुए, वहाँ पे the logical conclusion of the European notion was fascism, an aggrandizing alpha male fascism. All right. Now that is not our nationalism. Is the point number one. दूसरा point where I would like to sort of draw from the rich material that Professor Azadi provided. The Indian nationalists who imagined our modern Indian nation didn't do it from the air. They drew from our history, and that is what he was talking about. They drew from a history from the ancient past through the medieval period. And the best way to study that, to my mind, is easily the most scholarly work that I have read, is The Discovery of India. As a historian, I can say with confidence that this Discovery of India, Nehru wrote, Nehru ka naam le liya, Nehru wrote in prison in the 1940s. He wrote it in prison, and that manuscript is available in Nehru Memorial Museum and Library. Aap jaake dekhiye. It's written one continuous thing. No corrections. I mean, it takes an incredible mind to write that. And what does he write in it? He asked the same question, which the poets asked. Kya baat hai ki hasti mitti nahi hamari? Why is it that India is what it is? He's also asking that question in Discovery. And he gives answers which are the same answers that have been given by Amartya Sen, that has been given by Irfan Habib, that has been given by Zaidi Saab, and so many other scholars. And he's saying it in the 1940s. What does he say? He says India, it will be this secular, inclusive, democratic nation because we can draw from our history a dialogical tradition, a tradition of debate. That's why he calls his book The Argumentative India. He says you compare Sanskrit, and of course you will correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not saying it. Amartya Sen is saying it. In front of Jha Saab, I'm a little worried about saying anything about ancient or medieval. So he says that if you compare Sanskrit with other classical languages, this is Amartya Sen in his book Argumentative Indian, and also even more strongly in this book The Idea of Justice, where he brings in Akbar in a very big way also, where he says that there is this dialogue. If you compare Sanskrit with other ancient languages, Greek, Latin, etc., you will find there is far more of questioning. And he starts with the original hymn of the Rig Veda, where it is said that on the one hand there is God, and on the other maybe there isn't. You are from the very beginning questioning even this, not only saying that there can be multiple ways of achieving God, but you are saying that maybe there isn't one. And that tradition, he says, continues through Buddha, where he talks of 1,000 truths. No notion of one truth, which is the European fascist notion. Everybody, either कहते हैं ना कि enlightenment यूरोप में आई, तो उससे फिर हिंदुस्तान में भी enlightenment आ गई. Completely a rubbish notion. अकबर की बात ले लीजिए. 16th century ruler, ruling in the 16th century for about 40 years. This is not my
almost
50 years, and this comparison was made by Professor Rothermund. He's an economic historian, a German economic historian. He compared, if you recall, Akbar's rule with I think it was Charles in Spain for the same period. He also ruled for roughly the same period. And he says, what does Akbar do? All those things Adi Saab said. Reason, rationality, sulh-e-kul, debate. He organizes in the 16th century in his court debate between Hindus, Christian priests, Muslim priests, etc., including atheists. And what is happening in Europe? जहाँ से हमको सब कुछ सीखा था हमने apparently, they are doing the Spanish inquests, killing thousands on the basis of minor differences of religion, attacking Islam on the ground कि आप इतने liberal क्यों हो? I mean, this is all. I'm not an expert, but I'm saying all out of Nehru. He writes extensively about that. Islam was being attacked in Europe because it is being too liberal, allowing too much difference. And look at what notion we have created about Islam now. Islam is all about being hardcore and cutter and whatnot. So एक general point मैं कहना चाह रहा था that the way India imagines its nation is very different from Europe, and one more point I will make and then I'll let it be. Before I make my second point, Nehru gives a very good example of this composite culture emerging. And I'm glad that I'm able to quote him, because we have thousands of examples of composite culture. When the British did a in the turn of the 19th century, when they did beginning of the 20th century, they did a survey, and they found that there were thousands of communities in various parts of India. If you ask them, what are you? They said, I am a Hindu Muslim. They said, ये कैसे हो सकता है? तो कहते कोई बात नहीं, I am a Muslim Hindu. That is, they identified with both religions equally well. You know, and this is not me, this is not Jawaharlal Nehru, this is the British records. You know? So I mean, there are dozens of examples one can give of that. But what Nehru picks on is he says, when was Amir Khusro? कौन से सेंचुरी के थे? 14. कहते 700 साल तक अमीर खुसरो के लिखे हुए गाने आज तक across religions people sing. छाप तिलक किसने नहीं गाया? है ना? उसी लैंग्वेज में गाए जा रहे हैं. He says that is what is the composite culture, where you imbibe things across religions without even noticing it. कोई पूछता भी नहीं है कि लैला मजनू हिंदू थे कि मुस्लिम थे. अब किसी को पूछ के देखो बता नहीं पाएंगे. आधे लोग ये नहीं बता पाएंगे कबीर हिंदू थे कि मुस्लिम थे. It does not matter. So that is the other thing. And the last point I wanted to make was that if the making of a nation is a process. In fact, the national movement leaders, it started with the book written by Surendra Banerjee in the 19th century called India, a Nation in the Making. It's a process. हम बना रहे हैं एक देश. Now, if it's the process to make a nation, it can also be a process of destroying a nation. जी, the direction we are going in. So it is very important, and we got examples of this. No nation is given forever and ever and ever. Pakistan को देख लीजिए. Nations have, the best example of course is Yugoslavia, split up into 6, 7 countries, right in front of our noses, and for similar reasons, as I will tell you soon. That is when you begin to have some history, ज़्यादातर लोग history, I know there is a literature person here, when you begin to weaponize history, you can create a situation where the nation itself can break up. और मैं एक एग्जांपल दूंगा, मेरे एरिया के नहीं है इसलिए गलती होगी तो माफ कीजिएगा. My only authority I have behind me is Ramilata. तो she gives an example. ये जो notion है कि मोहम्मद गजनी आए और उन्होंने सोमनाथ को destroy कर दिया, and it singed the Hindu psyche forever and ever. कि हिंदुओं के दिल में मतलब ऐसी चोट पहुंच गई कि हिंदू मुस्लिम कभी इकट्ठा हो ही नहीं सकता उसके बाद. ट्रॉमा हो गया जी, बहुत जोर है. आजकल तो सबको ट्रॉमा होता रहता है. तो फिर रामनाथ ने कहा कि लेट मी इन्वेस्टिगेट दिस कि क्या हुआ भाई. So she's written this book. I mean, many of you would have read it, but to me, what seemed like a fantastic point that emerges from it politically. She says that, and looking at multiple sources across languages, she says that 150 years, this is happening in the 11th century, the destruction of the Somnath. 150 years later, the temple is rebuilt. And those who rebuilt the temple make no mention of Muhammad of Ghazni. She's saying that the destruction of the temple was seen by the people as what was medieval, what were the medieval period and what were the medieval rulers doing. They were destroying each other's places of worship across religion. You know, Buddhist temples were destroyed by Brahmanical this thing. Within the Hindu word to Thaini, within the Brahmanical tradition, one sect would destroy the other sect's temples, etc., etc. And it was routine, often for wealth, often for establishing power. But ये कोई नहीं था कि that meant that the Hindus and Muslims got divided. But the better example she gives is that 250 years later, after the destruction of the Somnath, a Muslim merchant is given a permission to build a mosque within the temple properties, rights, temple estates, to build a mosque with the full support of the temple authorities, of the local Hindu king and the public. Nobody's raised a question. So ये Hindu trauma कब हुआ? 19th century में जाके British Parliament में ये सवाल उठाया जाता है कि देखो सोमनाथ टेम्पल जो डिस्ट्रॉय हुआ उससे हिंदुओं को बड़ी चोट पहुंची, उससे people like Munje and others, and then of course the RSS picked up this notion कि ये Hindu-Muslim permanent divide हो गया. Now what you are doing is you are weaponizing history. एक 800 साल पहले का एक किस्सा हुआ जिसमें कोई there was no permanent divide among people, उसको आपने बना दिया as an issue which is weaponized, as I said, and this is exactly what happened in Yugoslavia. 14th century, an attack happens from an Islamic ruler which kills several Muslims, which memory was revived in the 1990s. It was weaponized in a manner that 8,000 Bosnian Muslims were massacred in Srebrenica. Srebrenica में अभी भी जाएंगे तो वहाँ पे उन्होंने पूरे graves बनाए हुए हैं. It's a sight worth seeing. Something like the Holocaust Museum, which reminds you that what atrocity can happen. And it is from there on, in the 1990s, that various sections in Yugoslavia begin to assert their identity rights, and the whole country blows up. So we should be as historians, be very, very careful in looking at sources in the manner in which Zaidi Saab and other scholars have done, to show what was the actual reality, and not permit people who neither have degrees or have forgotten their degrees, or the degrees cannot be found, or they have degrees in fictitious subjects like entire political science. They should not be telling us what is history. Yeah? History should be written by historians, not by politicians, not by home ministers and prime ministers and this, that and the other. As I said, if you were Nehru, you would probably still try to write, but still not claim that my history is the only history. But that is what I would say we would like to have to be. I'm sorry for taking so long. The floor is open for questions to Zaidi sir. There you go. I'm so glad that the first question is asked by a girl.
Thank you, sir. Sir, as it's our immense pleasure you both are here. And